I explained last week that we will be zooming through the factoring process starting Wednesday. Tomorrow you'll be taking your SAT stuff. I guess it's a school-wide function, so there is no real lesson tomorrow. I think 4th hour you'll be in the SAT room. 5th hour and 7th hour you'll actually get a chance to work on your homework. But like I said, the good news is most of this stuff you've already been pre-taught a lot. The bad news again is that looking at the grades, most of you have not really taken it seriously, so you might not be ready just yet. But for those of you who have been doing everything you're supposed to do, this will be an easy 2 weeks. It'll be 2 weeks for you to go ahead and, like I said, adjust whatever I taught you and turn those into A's. And again, for those of you who are in trouble, you're going to have to turn the corner and do some work. You're not going to be able to work on your homework for the next few series of assignments until you get 100% on the Math XL assignment for the day. So you want to make sure you take good notes on this information. Anything that you think you won't be able to remember, write down. I will suggest that you write down at least a couple examples so you get an idea. But like I said, other than that, it's about a 50-question homework assignment. But they're quick questions that you can easily answer once you understand what's going on. One of the things you're going to be asked to do is to find the GCF, or greatest common factor. Anytime you're asked to find the greatest common factor of two numbers, there's a few different ways to do it. Number sense for those of you who are good at math, factor trees for those of you who are not so good at math but you at least can follow a direction, and then calculator fluency helps whenever the numbers get out of control. These two things are what I'm really going to focus on because, again, number sense, you can kind of do factor trees in your head so you can get the idea, but like I said, factor trees and calculator fluency are what we're going to focus on right now. One of the things I'll ask you to do is find the GCF of the numbers. You don't have to use factor trees, but I'm going to show you how to use factor trees to do it in such a way that is, again, using common sense and working in a way that makes sense for you. What I'm going to do is understand that the greatest common factor means I want the biggest number. I'm also going to look and say that if I'm going to do factor trees in a shortcut way, which I'll show you first, I'm not going to pick the bigger number. I'm going to actually pick the smaller number. So let's go ahead and do the tree for 116 or 16, which is 1 times 16, 2 times 8. 3 doesn't go in, but 4 times 4 does. And so what we can do from there, instead of making a factor tree for both of them, is now that we have this, again, we want the greatest factor, so we want to start with the biggest number and ask yourself, does 16 go into 36? You could use your calculator to check, but it does not. You could ask yourself, does 8 go into 36? Using a calculator to check. It does not. Does 4 go into 36? Yes, it does. So therefore, your GCF in that case is 4. That is how you use factor trees, just making one factor tree of the smaller number and kind of checking. That's one way to do it. Again, you have to pick a method that works better for you because you are going to have to find the GCF of two numbers, sometimes even 3. I think there are like 4 questions where you've got to find the GCF of 3 numbers, but the bottom line is you need to be able to find those numbers in order to get your answers right. If you're going to do it another way, that is where you will actually make factor trees for both. So 1 times 80, 2 and 40, 3 doesn't go, 4 times 20, 5 times, I believe, 16, 6 is a no, 7 is a no, 8 times 10, 9 doesn't go, and 10's already there, so that would be my tree for 80. 112 I don't know so well, so I might need a calculator for this, but 2 times, I think, 56. 3 doesn't go. An easy way to check to see if 3 goes is you add the numbers. 2 plus 1 is 2, 3, 4, and 4 is not divisible by 3, so therefore that is proof that 3 does not go into 112. I don't know what that is, but 112 divided by 3 again doesn't go because, as I said, the sum of the digits does not add up to 3. 4 I think does go because you checked the last 2 digits, and 12 does go, so 112. Actually, I can show you a way to do this. I know that 4 goes into it, so what you say to yourself is 4 goes into 11 twice with 3 left over. Imagine that 3 being there, making it 32. It goes into 32 8 times, but again, you can use a calculator. 5 won't go because 5's end in a 5 or a 0. 6, I don't know. I'll use a calculator for that. 7 is 16. 8, I'm sorry, 112 divided by 8 is 14. 9, I don't think so because 9 works like 3's where it should add up to the something that's divisible by 9. 10, no. 11, and notice that my answer is smaller. That's what I taught you earlier, so that means that is the full tree there. And so now you just look for the common factor. Again, if you're going to do both trees, 80 is not in both lists, 40 is not in both lists, 20 not in both lists, but I see a 16 here and a 16 there, which means that 16 is your GCF. That is how you would do it using number trees. Using the calculator, and this is just calculator fluency, it's things that you already know. What you do is you make a fraction of the numbers with the smaller number on top, and you use common sense from there. So 420 over 539, what I'm going to do is put 420 divided by 539 into a decimal, and then I'm going to turn into a fraction by hitting math, enter, enter, and this turns into 60 over 77. The question is, we're dividing by the same number here as we are there. The calculator is already telling us our answer. The question is, how do we find that number? Well, what you do is whatever number you got here, just divide it, and that'll tell you what the number is. So I'm going to do 420 divided by 60 to get the answer of 7. You could also do, just to prove, 539 divided by 77, and notice that you still get the answer of 7, which means that 7 is the biggest number that we divided by. So again, if you're going to do the GCF using your calculator, you make your fraction, or make a fraction out of the two numbers, find a, simplify that fraction, and then just divide this number by that number. You don't need to do the bottom. Just take this top by that top, and it gives you that information. Again, on this one, 1032 and 936, just put it into a fraction form with the smaller number on top. 936 divided by 1032, and you get math, enter, enter, 39 over 43. And again, all we have to do now is do this number divided by that number, 936 divided by 39, and you get the answer of 24. So again, the calculator does a lot of work for us. In this case, you use the calculator to actually reduce the fraction for you, which obviously tells you what you're dividing by on top and bottom to break down those numbers. Alright, so again, make sure you know how that works. If asked to find the GCF of variables, you have to rely on your understanding of what exponents mean and what the word common means. If you wanted the GCF of x to the third and x to the seventh, this means there are 3 x's. That means there are 7 x's. Well, how many do they have in common? Just 3. And so the GCF of x to the third and x to the seventh means they both have 3 x's in common because they both have 3 x's. You want the highest amount, so the greatest number, that they have in common, which is 3. You can't say 4 because this doesn't have 4. If you wanted the GCF of t to the fifth and t, that means that you have 5 t's, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and this one just has 1. How many do they have in common? Just a 1, so your GCF of that is t. In all honesty, all you have to do is, when it comes to variables, is just choose the smaller of the two options. Again, if you want the highest amount they have in common, it's going to represent whatever that lower number is. So this obviously has 3 x's in common. This is obviously going to have 1 t in common. You just choose the smaller of the two parts. So even if we had 3 things to choose from, and you wanted the GCF of m to the third, m to the eighth, and m to the second, the most that these can have in common is the lower of the numbers, which is m to the second. And so make sure, again, you practice that, because again, that's not going to be so bad to do. In the end, what you're going to be asked to do is to find the GCF of terms that contain both numbers and variables. All you have to do is perform the proper process for each piece and put them together. A little alliteration for you. So what we do here is we look at 260 and 385 on their own. So we do 260 divided by 385 the way we kind of learned earlier in here. We do math, enter, enter, and then you know that this is 260 on top, which turned into 52, so I do 260 divided by 52, which is 5. So the biggest number is 5. X's we both have, and notice that the highest amount they could have in common, this has 4 x's, that has 2. The highest amount they could have in common is 2. In terms of y's, this has 3, that has 12. The highest amount they could have in common is 3. So you're going to have to practice that. You're going to have to get that down. Again, this is part of that big assignment coming up, and I do hope that you take it seriously, because again, it's going to lock you up for the rest of your chapter homework if you don't get that done. When it comes to reducing the fractions, you've been doing this for years. It's an expectation that you have either mastered the skill or that you found a secondary option to perform it at least effectively. So you may not be perfect at it on your own, but again, you should have at least found some way to do it. No matter what your level of expertise may be, these problems will be set up for you to practice the secondary option in case the numbers get out of hand, because even those who know how to do it, sometimes big numbers just don't work for you. Because your calculator performs division and converts decimals into fractions, it actually reduces the fractions for you. So you will see, and this is pretty much the same thing we just did, it will ask you to reduce some fractions. And so all we have to do is type in 152 divided by 520. That turns it into the lowest decimal form. You hit math, enter, enter, and that actually reduces the fraction for you into 19 over 65. That's how easy it is. If you want to reduce the fraction 284 over 1184, you just simply type 284 divided by 1184. Math, enter, enter, and you notice that gives me the fraction 71 over 296. That is the reduced form of that fraction. So anytime you need to reduce a fraction, that is really all that it's going to take, is just for you to go ahead and type it in and change it back into a fraction. Alright. Mastering number combinations. Many of you are still not completely comfortable with finding numbers that multiply to make one value while adding to make another. Because you are definitely going to need this for Wednesday and Thursday's work, actually for the test at the end of this week. You will also have exercises to help you improve. Again, it's up to you to actually try to get better. All that I can do is provide the opportunity for your growth. If you have any issues, just please ask for help. I am fully aware that there are many options to answer the homework problems without me. I know that they all exist. But those options obviously are causing some of you to fail tests, so why not just try doing it the right way before the end of the quarter, and then find out that you actually have what it takes to pass if you just do the job the right way, because there is no shortcut out of here, and you're going to have to earn it if you want to pass. So I'd say try it out and find out that I'm actually good at my job and you're actually good at your job, and we'll make it just fine. But like I said, some of you have a long way to go for this quarter, but you do at least have the fourth quarter and the final. Our old format, and what we're talking about, would say something like find two numbers that multiply to make 56 and add to make negative 15. This is a lot of words, and math does not like to use a lot of words. It likes to use shorthand, and so we're going to translate into a script that says multiplies to equal 56, adds to be negative 15. Notice it says everything that it needs to say. It takes much less time to write. Also, you should understand the meaning of the symbol, so it is understandable. Again, it multiplies to be 56. There's your multiplies to make 56. It adds to make negative 15. There's your add to make negative 15. I'm not going to reteach that skill because, again, that's your responsibility, especially since I have purposefully placed it in many of your assignments over the last 2 weeks or so. Instead, what we're going to do is focus on the signs of the problem in this, and so this is what you're going to do. The question is going to pretty much ask you about the what the number signs are. So, I'm sorry, I'll skip something over there. I think it's here. So looking at multiplication, consider the two options from the problem. We are either multiplying to make a positive number, as you've seen before, or you're multiplying to make a negative number. That tells us an important part of the problem, because based off of if we have a positive number, it means that a positive times a positive is positive, and a negative times a negative is positive. What that tells us is whether the signs are the same or different. And in this case, if it multiplies to make a positive, the only way you get a positive number is if it's positive times positive or negative times negative. And so that's something you're going to have to kind of use to think through these questions. And again, I ask that you think through them, not just guess through them, because you won't get any better. And the better you get at it, the easier it's going to be when everything comes together. Therefore, we know for a fact now that if the numbers multiply to make a positive number, then the signs must be the same. Conversely, the only way you get a negative is if it's a positive times a negative or a negative times a positive. So we know that if it makes a negative, that the signs must be different. Again, that's if it multiplies to be a positive or if it multiplies to be a negative. So again, therefore, if the values multiply to make a negative number, then the signs have to be different, because that's the only way you get a negative. What I usually do is I think about it like this. If there is a truck collecting cats and dogs, and the truck runner or whatever goes and finds 6 dogs and puts them in the back of the truck, and it's just 6 dogs back there, and then he goes to another neighborhood and he picks up 7 more dogs and throws them in the back of the truck, everything is good, because dogs and dogs are not going to bother each other. So the same is going to be positive. Same thing as if he picked up 5 cats that he found as strays and it was an empty truck, and he puts them in the back of the truck, and then he goes to another neighborhood and picks up 2 more cats and throws them in the back of the truck. Everything is okay. It is bad though whenever he puts 6 dogs in the truck on the first run, and then puts 10 cats in the truck because dogs and cats don't typically get along. And so that's how I think about it. If they are the same, it's going to be positive. If it is different, then it's going to be negative. So again, whatever you've got to do for that, just make sure you get it understood. Addition is easy because we know that the bigger number gets the sign. So if the value add to make a positive number, then the bigger number must be positive. If the value is add to make a negative number, then the bigger value must be negative. I will say right now, be sure that you take good notes on this portion especially, and ask questions when you get to these problems in your homework. They're easy enough to do, but you must understand how it works to be successful in this week's work. So please now go to Math XL and begin practicing your skill set for the end of the quarter. Again, this is going to wrap up our quarter. We are going to have 2 days of a lesson, actually 1 day of a lesson followed by a day of practice followed by a test. Then you're going to have another 2 days of a lesson followed by a test, and another test to end the quarter. So this is it. We've got like 2 more actual lessons to go through, 2.5, 2 or 3, and that's going to be it. So like I said, make sure you're doing your job, especially if you are in the position where you have to fight back. You need to focus on it, and you need to take care of business. But other than that, like I said, I'm wishing you good luck. Let's knock it out.